Hello and welcome to the latest installment of Law & Order, the video series where I look at and unpack stories from games. In this one, we'll be looking at the story from the new epic zombie horror game, the much anticipated Dying Light, The Beast. First of all, and before we begin, a massive thank you to Techland for sponsoring this video. After 10 long years, we finally got a continuation on the story of Dying Light 1's Kyle Crane. The following is now also being confirmed canon, as has one particular ending which resulted in much debate in the Dying Light community surrounding the fate of Haran. Dying Light the Beast boasts better parkour and an awesome combat system which is now way more visceral than previous titles. This is down to a gruesome damage system thanks to Techland's new physics engine. As with most Dying Light titles, melee combat is the intended way to play the game, although the guns do pack a punch too. With the melee combat though, the ragdoll physics really emphasise brutal hits from a good variety of weapons, which are also able to be modified for different types of damage. As in previous titles, you can choose how to go about your business, be that stealth or going in swinging. Vehicles have improved too, as the area of Castor Woods has many roads and hills to speed through. This is especially tense during chases, but as the volatiles jump onto your vehicle, you can zap them with the UV light to try and get away. Just make sure you don't run out of fuel during a chase, or allow your vehicle to explode. But best of all are the much darker nights. Seriously, the nights are terrifying and difficult as the volatiles are smarter, faster and more aggressive. Getting to the safe spot you previously unlocked is both challenging and nerve-wracking. In terms of performance, I'm playing on a fairly mid-range gaming PC, specs in the description, and I had zero performance issues throughout the entire game. Dying Light the Beast is out now on Xbox Series X and S, PlayStation 5 and PC, so make sure you get it for that zombie slaying parkour goodness that we all love by using the link in the description or in the pinned comment below. Again, thank you to Techland for sponsoring this video. We'll now dive into the story, so please be aware that there will be spoilers in this video for Dying Light the Beast, Dying Light 1, the following, and Dying Light 2. Let's begin. Meet Kyle Crane. A former Green Beret, Kyle ended up working with various private military companies after he left the army. One of these companies was the GRE, or the Global Relief Effort, a humanitarian organisation linked to the Ministry of Defence. A virus had hit the city of Haran in Turkey. It was not too dissimilar to the rabies virus, except for the fact that the living were becoming undead, and very soon the main part of Haran had to be sealed off and quarantined. Kyle was to go in and secure a file stolen from the GRE by one of their former operatives, Kadir Suleiman, who was going by the name Rice, and who was using the file to blackmail the GRE. He had been in Haran's quarantine zone for a fair while, and had established himself as a warlord with a very powerful grip over the survivors stranded there, and who would hoard a medicine known as antizin, which was a virus suppressant which stopped people from turning into undead monsters. Anyway, upon getting there, Kyle got infected straight away after he was attacked by a load of infected. He was saved by and would team up with a local group who were fighting back against Rice. Kyle found out that the GRE were up to some pretty awful stuff, and contrary to what they tried to lead the public to believe, that they were attempting to make a cure, they actually wanted a weapon. This is what Rice had discovered and was planning to give the data back to the GRE in exchange for a ride out of the city. Kyle killed Rice before that could happen, and chose to give the file to a scientist stuck in Haran who was working on his own cure. This didn't go well, so Kyle left Haran and went to the countryside in search of a cure. There he met a strange cult who called themselves the Children of the Sun, who themselves were devoted to a leader they called the Mother. Kyle met the Mother, who was revealed to be a sentient volatile, which are usually an extremely aggressive zombie variant. She did something to him by giving him a blue liquid to drink, and he changed. Kyle walked outside and he was revealed to have been turned into a volatile. He was then hunted by the GRE whilst he was clinging on to what was left of his humanity, and he was caught and experimented on in a facility somewhere, and in the meantime 98% of the global population was wiped out. And this is where we'll pick up our story. We'll now have a look at the plot in its most basic form, and then we'll unpack different aspects of the story afterwards. Some 13 years after his capture, Kyle is once again being subjected to extremely painful experiments and wants to at least try to take out the man in charge of the experiments before he dies. Lying in a bed with researchers standing around him, people walk into the room and subdue the researchers, and two men try to free him from his restraints. The two men are eventually subdued themselves by security, and Kyle is then sedated. He comes to in a large chamber, and a researcher mentions stem cells and to proceed with Subject Alpha. The man in charge walks in and wants to inject the serum himself. Kyle begins to shake violently and tells him they're all going to die. The man tells Kyle that he's writing him off as he's found a new test subject and will not be needing Kyle anymore as this new subject is more compliant and obedient. The man orders another dose be administered to Kyle despite the researchers saying it may kill him. The man then walks away. A short while later, something happens and this new subject starts to wake up. The researchers panic, and whilst the subject runs off, Kyle is able to free himself from his restraints. He passes out again but hears a voice over a radio which wakes him up. The woman on the other end says that her name is Olivia and that she's going to help get him out of there. There are zombies all over the facility and Olivia directs Kyle to an elevator. There he is cornered and his beastly instincts kick in and he tears the zombies that are trying to attack him limb from limb. Managing to get into the elevator, it stops and he faces a mad dash through the closing facility doors in order to escape. Kyle emerges outside for the first time in 13 years. Leaving this facility behind, Olivia contacts him again and tells him that this place is called Castor Woods, a small town located in the Western Alps in Europe. There's an old abandoned monastery at the bottom of the hill. Kyle is to go there and secure it so they can use it as a safe zone, as the nights are very dangerous. Doing so and making it secure, Kyle meets Olivia. She says that she helped him as she wants to get away from this place. She was herself forced to work for the man in charge of the experiments, who she reveals calls himself the Baron. She tells Kyle he's in no condition to take him on, and he needs to get stronger first. She will help him get his revenge against the Baron in exchange for his help getting her out of there. She says that Kyle will need something called GSB, a biocatalyst that improves performance and is something that they created in the lab. She says they can harvest it from monsters that were created in the lab too. The Baron has been testing these monsters in the wild, and Castor Woods is the staging ground for these tests. As it so happens, one of these monsters shows up there at the monastery. These monsters are called Chimeras, according to Olivia. Going to face the huge monster called the Reaper, Kyle is able to bring it down. Kyle starts to have some trouble. Olivia draws blood from the Reaper and injects a vial into Kyle, and he passes out. Waking up days later, Kyle speaks to Olivia again. He's not too happy about her having directly injected him with GSB, but she says that her doing that saved his life. She explains that various Chimeras have different GSBs, so each one will enhance Kyle's abilities in a different way. Essentially, Kyle will need to hunt down these beasts and kill them to harvest the GSB in their blood. She explains that the Baron resides at the family estate, which is essentially a fortress, as it's also an old castle. After accepting the fact that he's now a human-infected hybrid, Kyle heads to find allies in their fight against the Baron, whilst Olivia tries to track down the locations of the Chimeras being tested in the wild. He needs to head to Old Town as there may be some survivors there. Olivia also says she saw smoke, and she gives Kyle the location. On the way there, Kyle receives an urgent radio transmission from someone who is saying they are under attack at the town hall. Entering, it's a bloody sight, as the dead bodies of the Baron's men lie everywhere and a banging is coming from inside the courtyard. Killing the zombies there, another Chimera arrives at the party. This one is known as the Defect. He brings this one down too. Grabbing the sample from the Chimera, Kyle injects one vial into himself and keeps one vial for Olivia's research. After another reaction to the GSB, Kyle makes contact with the survivors in the town hall, and after convincing them that he's not with the Baron, they let him in. He speaks with two people who tell him that the backup system went down, so naturally, Kyle is the one that needs to get it back up and running again. Their sheriff, or rather their leader, went to restore it but hasn't returned. At the base of the clock tower, he speaks with a survivor, and he says that the biters broke the ladder. Parkouring his way up the clock tower, Kyle meets the sheriff. After a frosty initial meeting, Kyle heads down, grabs the power cable, and climbs back up the tower, restoring the power. Afterwards, the sheriff introduces herself as Florence. Speaking with her people again, the survivor Kyle spoke to before is revealed to be bitten. Kyle says they just need some antizin, and the sheriff reveals that antizin no longer exists. The man then shoots himself to prevent himself from turning. The survivors speak of a beast, and not the one that Kyle just killed. The sheriff says she saw it take off across the rooftops when she was in the tower. Speaking to a man named Jacob, he says that the beast followed the Baron's men to the town hall, and he asks Kyle to track it down. So, picking up his trail and being careful to avoid volatiles, he sees an explosion in the distance. Going to check it out, he finds a crashed truck and a load of bodies, and inside the truck, he hears a radio transmission from the Baron's men, asking for reinforcements and that the beast is after them and they're at a church. Going to said church and heading in through the basement, Kyle gains access to the church and hears gunshots along with screaming. It's a bloodbath. The beast is definitely here. The beast then jumps into the bell tower and escapes, waking up all the sleeping virals. recently turned infected who still have some humanity left, and Kyle has to evade them and then climbs up the tower to go after the beast. Leaving, Kyle hears the Baron's men screaming that they need help at the tunnels. So going there too and hearing more screams and dealing with a large infected, Kyle comes face to face with the beast, who leaps onto him. A dying man then collapses the tunnel using a grenade. Coming to after passing out, Kyle spots the beast, which once again runs off. The danger has not passed though, as he is chased from the tunnel by volatiles and virals, just about making it out to the safety of daylight. Heading back to speak with Olivia as she now has more information on the next Chimera, she says that she has been researching the genetic structure and she noticed an odd sequence in the code, one that seems like it's been deliberately modified for a specific purpose. Giving him another location of a potential Chimera, he heads there and finds a similar site. It's another grisly scene, but in the truck he's able to read more about this one. It's called Chimera Nebulosa number 478 and was created in order to understand applications of enhanced sensory capabilities in hybrids. Tracking the Chimera, Kyle is led to a small island in the middle of the lake. There he is confronted by the Chimera. This agile screaming monstrosity is named Mist, and it summons infected and also leaps about and is incredibly hard to hit. Nonetheless, Kyle is able to defeat it and puts it down for good. He takes the sample and injects himself with it, again taking a sample for Olivia. Returning to the town hall, Kyle speaks with the sheriff. She says they can't rely on their backup system, and she says he needs to go to the power plant, which went down about a month ago. The sheriff says that she sent 2 squads of rangers there to investigate, but they didn't return. So Kyle offers to head over there on the premise that they'll owe him one. Approaching the plant, he hears what seems to be the foreman telling Kyle not to bother trying to get inside. He does though, and he speaks to the man called Largo, and he's not very complimentary. He says that in order to get the plant back online, they need to reactivate the turbines, which are underwater. So after a little bit of swimming and a lot of verbal abuse from Largo, Kyle is able to drain the water and then gets the turbines back up and running, despite stiff opposition in the form of infected. After this, Largo tricks Kyle. He's working with the Baron. Who didn't see that coming? Kyle is captured by the Baron's men and is tied up. The Baron wants him back, it seems. He tries warning them about his beastly nature, and they proceed to force him to unleash it, and he ends up tearing them limb from limb. Once they're all dead, Kyle does what he's there for and gets the power back on. Speaking with the sheriff and telling her he couldn't find her rangers, more men arrive at the plant. Kyle says that he'll take them out, but the sheriff is more concerned about starting an all-out war with the Baron, something that her group of survivors are not equipped for. Despite her concerns, Kyle takes them all out so that the power stays on. Heading back to the town hall to speak with the sheriff and Jacob, Kyle tells them that the Baron is already their enemy whether they like it or not. Kyle talks about starting a resistance to stand with them, made up from people in the valley, but Jacob agrees with the sheriff, stating that open war with the Baron would be a terrible idea. Kyle suggests taking their time and gathering allies, keeping an eye on what he's doing, and Jacob seems to like that idea. The sheriff doesn't agree, and she thinks they should focus on rebuilding the town hall to be more secure. Kyle argues that they should do both. Meanwhile, Olivia has found a potential location of another Chimera at an old monument, and asking either Jacob or the sheriff about the monument, they reveal that the rangers reported seeing strange gas canisters there, and they think the Baron is running some kind of experiment. Sounds a lot like the Chimera testing. Heading over to the monument, there's a ton of infected there, but clearing them all out, Kyle investigates and finds a similar device to the ones he's seen at other Chimera testing areas. He then finds a gas canister with E and F written on the side. Olivia says that this is a company that manufactured chemical reagents. Their plant is located to the south of the city, so Kyle heads over there in order to check it out, dealing with any infected he may encounter on the way. He also has to deal with more of the Baron's men outside the plant, but he is able to get inside. He is fired upon by more militiamen, but they flee and shout that something has broken out. Clearing the area of any remaining soldiers, Kyle finds a researcher there. He initially tries to kill Kyle, but begs for his life after Kyle corners him. He pretty quickly gives up information and says they are testing a new virus strain for the Chimeras. He said that particular Chimera was the one that escaped, but that Kyle can still find it by luring it to a location by using the gas canisters. This is what the devices are for, gas dispersal. So after knocking the researcher out, Kyle retrieves a canister, loads it onto a truck and drives it to a junkyard near the plant. Taking out more soldiers, he places the canister into the machine and lets it work its magic. Lo and behold, the Chimera is lured to the junkyard like a moth to a flame. This Chimera is aptly named the Behemoth. He's a tough SOB, but once again Kyle is able to defeat it and obtains the sample, becoming that one bit closer to being strong enough to defeat whatever the Baron will be able to throw at him. Afterwards, taking the sample to Olivia, she reveals that the Chimera's genetic code contains duplicate fragments of Kyle's own DNA. She thinks that the Baron was hoping to enhance the Chimeras using Kyle's abilities. She says that she doesn't really know much else about the gas yet though. She says that they need more samples. Kyle wants a crack at the Baron now, saying that he doesn't want to keep injecting himself with GSB. He leaves and the sheriff shares some intel that the Baron's men have been seen near to the old salt mine. It seems that something big is going down and she tells Kyle that she'll meet him there. So going to meet the sheriff by the salt mine, she says that she'll cover him whilst he heads inside. Making his way through the mine, either sneaking through or engaging the Baron's men directly, there's no sign of the Baron, but Kyle comes across a container and something is banging on it from the inside. Contacting the sheriff, she has decided to betray Kyle, saying that she needs to protect her people. He is quickly surrounded by the Baron's men. The Baron then approaches, saying that he's building the future, reminding Kyle that he no longer needs him. He once again talks about his new and perfect subject. Kyle then fights back, opening the container door. Out of it leaps the beast, and after a tense standoff, the beast escapes. The Baron fires a grenade at a wall, causing a cave-in. The Baron, the sheriff, and Kyle escape the mine though, and outside, Kyle warns the sheriff over the radio that in light of her betrayal, he's coming for her. Speaking with Olivia on the way there, Kyle says that she was right. He's not ready to face the Baron yet. He needs to find the other Chimeras in order to become stronger. Getting to the town hall, he speaks with Jacob, who reveals that the sheriff ran in, grabbed some of her stuff, and left. He is shocked to hear that she betrayed Kyle and that she tried to hand him over to the Baron. Jacob is now in charge of the town hall survivors, and Kyle promises that the sheriff is going to pay for what she did. He tells Jacob that the plan to take out the Baron still stands. He says that he doesn't have any intel on the Baron, but he knows of some people that do. A group of exiles that were forced out of their community by the sheriff. Jacob says that he kept a connection open with them. He calls them the infected ones. Some of them fugitives from the Baron's lab that the sheriff refused to let into the town hall. They managed to halt the progression of the disease with a strange infusion made from a rare strain of mushroom. He says that he'll make contact with them. On his way to the caves where the exiles live, Kyle hears a voice in his head via telepathy, and this gives him some PTSD, as this is similar to what happened to him after the mother had infected him. The person speaking to him asks him to meet him at a safe place called Pembroke Farm, but after that meeting place is no longer deemed safe, the man asks Kyle to meet him at a homestead in the marshes instead. Arriving and taking out some more of the Baron's men, Kyle meets this telepath. His name is Sven, and he's one of the exiles. He says that since they're both infected, they can communicate via their shared consciousness. Sven says that he and the other telepaths have been spying on the Baron for years. Before he's able to share this information, he needs help finding two of his team that are missing. He's tried to reach out using telepathy, but he's getting nothing back from them. Offering to help find them, Kyle heads to a farm to the west and investigates. He finds an outpost in the attic of the farmhouse and tells Sven that there's a map which has the Baron's outpost locations on it. It's likely they've been taken to one of these outposts. Going to the outpost, Kyle once again investigates and finds the Baron's men there, but no sign of Sven's fellow telepaths. Finding a radio on the table, he hears a transmission which mentions they got the freaks and they're taking them to a pig farm before they are to be transported to the palace. Getting to the pig farm, Kyle sees a flurry of activity there involving the Baron's men, and they appear to be moving crates to transport to the Baron's base, palace. He spots the telepaths ready for transport, and they're taken by the Baron's men. He's then confronted by a soldier, and this leads to a fight in the barn. Taking out even more of the Baron's lackeys, Kyle informs Sven that his people were taken, but he says that he has people watching the roads. After more fighting against the Baron's soldiers, Sven says that the men who took his people have stopped by the river. So Kyle goes there and saves the telepaths. He then drives them back to the exiles' cave in the hills, making sure to do so quickly before they turn. Getting there, Kyle is greeted by the exiles. These people live in hiding in this cave, the location of which is not known to the Baron. Sven is being reprimanded by the exiles' leader Lydia, but he argues that they were doing recon, as the Baron's men are killing their people. She responds that this will only serve to lead the Baron directly to them. Lydia thanks Kyle for his help but tells him to leave. Sven mentions Kyle's name, and Lydia is even more incensed as she knows that the Baron will tear the valley apart trying to find him, but Sven says that Kyle can help them. Lydia says that it's too dangerous for her people to get involved, and she once again requests that he leave. Following Sven, he introduces Kyle to Selby. Selby is in charge of the exiles' radio surveillance. She shares Sven's concern that if the Baron finds them there, it's over for them. They need to expand their surveillance capabilities in order to really find out and track what the Baron is doing in the valley. They ask Kyle to install a radio booster on a relay tower nearby. The Baron uses these to amplify his radio signal across the valley. Attaching this will enable them to listen to his comms. Doing this, Kyle will also be able to get first-hand intelligence from the exiles regarding the Baron's activities. Lydia, surprisingly, already agreed to increase surveillance, so climbing the tower, he installs the booster onto it. Unfortunately, the signal is not clear, so they need a radio from one of the Baron's men, as it will have an encryption key on it. Getting one and returning to Selby, this still does not do the job. Kyle needs to obtain more boosters from military convoys in the valley, and needs to install these on the 2 other towers. After placing the final transmitter onto the Belfry Tower, Selby tells him that the signal is clear. She hears something though. The Baron is preparing to attack the town hall by blowing it to Kingdom Come. Kyle instantly lets Jacob know, but he is unable to evacuate the survivors as the soldiers have barred the doors. Kyle then heads underneath the town hall and finds the Baron's men planting explosives. Defeating them and disarming the explosives, Kyle is able to save the town hall and its survivors. He wonders why the Baron would do this. Contacting Olivia, he tells her that the exiles are able to monitor the Baron's comms. She says that she has new information on a new Chimera and requests that Kyle meet her in the national park. Meeting with her, she says that she's tracked the Chimera and is not far away. Just up the hill, in fact, so Kyle goes to deal with it. He finds another gas dispenser but finds a canister nearby. Inserting it, he lures the Chimera to him. This one is toxic and it throws its toxic pustules at Kyle. Nonetheless, despite it being able to call upon more infected to the fight, Kyle bests it and brings the disgusting monstrosity down. Once again taking the samples from it, he returns to Olivia and she leaves in order to analyse this new sample. Sven then invades Kyle's mind again, telling him they've overheard some chatter over the radio that he may find interesting. That the Baron's scientists have been doing experiments at a school nearby until it was taken over and attacked by bandits. Lydia then pipes up. She's changed her tune and wants Kyle to get inside and find out what they were doing there. Meeting with their guy, Ray, outside the school, Kyle gets the necessary intel on what to expect inside and makes his way through the school. There are tons of infected inside, but thankfully most of them are asleep. Entering a small side room, Kyle confronts one of the scientists there. He says his name is Dr. Camillo Marin, and he says that he hid after the bandits attacked the school. Kyle contacts Ray and tells him that he'll meet him at the doors to the basement, and there, Ray takes Camillo to the Exile's cave. Camillo gave Kyle a key to the archive with a load of key information in there. Research. After grabbing it though, the Baron's men attack, and leaving the school, Kyle goes back to the caves. Delivering the research to Lydia, she explains that Ray never arrived back there with Camillo. Trying to reach out to Ray telepathically though, there's no response. Retracing the route, he finds the truck. Ray is dead, but Camillo is gone. Kyle traces him to a nearby house, and speaking with him, he says that a huge infected threw a telephone pole through the windshield, killing Ray. Lydia and Sven arrive, and it seems that the two know each other, and Camillo says that he'd always wondered if she'd made it. She thanks Kyle for what he did, and says that she needs to start trusting people if they are to survive. She explains that they were test subjects, and Camillo was the scientist that the Baron had assigned to them, but he treated them like humans and not just subjects. He is the one that developed the infusions that they use in order to keep them from turning into mindless infected zombies. She says that with Camillo's help, they'll soon be ready to take on the Baron. Her hope is that they can evolve their telepathic abilities even further. Contacting Olivia, she also knows Dr. Marin, Camillo, and calls him one of the Baron's top scientists. Mentioning the data drive he swiped from the school lab, she asks him to meet her at the old cement factory, as she thinks she's tracked another Chimera. Meeting with her, he gives her the data drive, and heading inside, Kyle soon encounters the Chimera. This one is quite similar to the mist Chimera he encountered earlier, in that it jumps around the place constantly. This one, however, tries to hide, and calls other zombies to the fight to do its bidding. It's called the Matriarch. Despite it being pretty hard to track down and hit, Kyle is able to bring this ugly thing down. Getting the sample again, Kyle is a little bit stronger now. Leaving the cement factory and delivering it to Olivia, she tells Kyle that she's analysed the data on the drive, and it seems the military had used gas on the infected before. She says it was called blue mist, and Kyle recalls the Children of the Sun used a similar substance which worked like a sedative. Anyway, the red gas is the opposite to the blue gas, and increases the zombies and Chimera's aggression, making this gas a very effective weapon. She discovered the name of the scientist that carried out the research on this gas, and it was her own father, and that he was in Haran at the start of the outbreak. Explains how the cult, the Children of the Sun, got the gas. Olivia says that her father is still working for the Baron, but not voluntarily, and in order to help her father, they need to kill the Baron first. After this enlightening little chat, Kyle returns to the cave and speaks with both Lydia and Camillo. She says that using a better infusion, they can enhance their telepathic abilities and will not only be able to communicate, but to also control. Camillo explains that this means they can control the infected, a weapon to use against the Baron. But in order to facilitate this, they will need Kyle to obtain some rare substances from a very dangerous area. This dangerous area is a volatile nest. Kyle is less than enthused but agrees to get them 3 samples of volatile plasma from 3 different lava. Kyle travels to this particular nest and enters. He finds another of the Baron's scientists there dead, along with a gas dispenser. Another Chimera is here. This one is a volatile capable of active camouflage that is called the Wraith. Using his UV flashlight to stun it, Kyle beats it to death. Grabbing yet more samples, he continues deeper into the nest. Thankfully, there's not too many volatiles inside the nest, but he still needs to be careful, as even one volatile noticing him is likely a death sentence. Sneaking around them, Kyle obtains the 3 plasma samples needed. But he is noticed, and there are a lot more volatiles alerted to his presence now. He makes a mad dash for the exit and just about makes it out. Back at the caves again, Kyle hands over the samples. Meeting up with Olivia once again, she says that there's another Chimera at the wastewater treatment facility, so over there, Kyle soon meets this Chimera. This is called the Colossus. It is empowered by toxic vats in the area, but despite this, Kyle is able to chip away at it and defeats it, obtaining the sample of GSB. This was the final Chimera, and Kyle says it's time for the Baron to pay. Lydia telepathically contacts Kyle as the tests on the plasma he obtained were successful, and she asks him to meet them in a small house near to a psychiatric hospital. At the house, they tell Kyle that he needs to sneak inside the psychiatric hospital and obtain a drug from the medical storage room. Thankfully, Lydia is able to control the infected in and around the hospital, meaning that as long as Kyle does not attack them, he is safe, even from the volatiles that roam the corridors. Getting to the storage room, Kyle grabs the drug, but an alarm goes off, severing Lydia's connection to the infected. If Kyle steps out of the room, he'll have to book it, and book it he does, eventually managing to make it to a safe zone. Camillo says that they were forced to leave the cabin, and meeting up with them once the danger has passed, Lydia is very weak, but Kyle immediately needs to spring back into action as the town hall is now under attack. It's the Baron's men. On the way there, he hears from the sheriff. He's not too happy to hear from her, but she says that she's sorry, but they need to work together to save her people. Heading to the town hall, he finds that the soldiers are dispersing the red gas in the plaza, and he takes out all of the Baron's men. Unfortunately, the danger has not passed, as mortar teams are on the rooftops firing grenades containing the gas into the plaza. After taking out the mortar teams, Kyle picks up and disposes of all the gas grenades. It gets worse as another Chimera shows up. Kyle defeats it, but then 2 more show up. Kyle fights them, but Lydia arrives and mind controls one Chimera, influencing it to attack the other one. They eventually bring the one down, and the other one leaves. The sheriff shows up and a furious Kyle confronts her. She says that the Baron captured her and forced her to make a decision. Kyle, or her people. She says that she had been hiding in the woods, and when Lydia turns up, the two have an awkward exchange, especially considering that it was the sheriff that exiled them. She apologizes to Lydia too, and everyone agrees to put everything behind them, uniting under the fact that they all have a common enemy. Kyle says that the Baron has patrols all over the valley searching for the beast. He wants it badly, and he suggests they capture the beast by luring it somewhere. Lydia knows the perfect spot to lure it to. They're going to need the red gas, so Kyle goes to the ENF factory again and grabs 2 canisters. Loading them onto some trucks, Kyle drives while the gas is dispersed around the valley. And their plan works as the beast takes the bait. It attacks the vehicle, and in a cave, Kyle fights the beast. He uses a baseball bat so as not to kill it, but he is to weaken it so that Lydia can influence it telepathically. This doesn't work though, and Kyle ends up knocking the beast out. Injecting him with Kyle's blood, the idea is that this will stabilize him, returning the beast to his human form. For the time being, Lydia assumes control of the beast and they transport him to the exile's cave. Going there to the cave, Kyle checks in with Lydia.
Time to wake up. Can you hear me? Give me a sign if you can.
Who are you? Where am I?
My name is Lydia. You've been lost inside yourself for a very long time, but I managed to find you and bring you back. Can you tell us who you are? How you got here?
I'm Aiden. My friend Spike and I were trying to rescue someone from the Baron, but it all went to shit. That's the last thing I remember. Until I woke up here.
Who were you trying to rescue?
Him. You're Kyle Crane, right? Spike's friend?
You and Spike tried to rescue me?
We did. Yeah, where is he? Did you find him when you found me?
No.
Well, then the Baron must still have him. We have to go back for him.
You're in no condition to go anywhere.
I'm fine. We need to find Spike and get him out of there. Who knows what they're doing to him? He's your friend too.
He is, and we'll go get him. But Lydia's right. You're in no condition to go after anyone.
We can't just let him rot in there.
We're not. That we won't. But going off half-cocked will just get Spike killed. We need a plan.
I was experimented on as a child. Infected with the virus. They messed with my DNA. I'd have these blackouts that turned me into something really dangerous. And that Baron got a hold of me. And I don't know what he did to me, but I barely remember anything. I kept trying to find my way out, but I was so lost. If not for you people, I don't think I ever would have found my way back.
What can you tell me about his operation?
The Baron lives in a massive fortress with snipers up top to guard the perimeter.
She's not wrong. It won't be easy.
Sheriff, it's the Baron. He's on the radio.
Speak of the devil.
Answer it.
This is the sheriff.
Is Crane there? That's who I'm calling for.
You can talk to me.
You don't have what I need.
And I do.
Ah, Crane. You have something that belongs to me. I want it back. And if you don't comply, everyone you care about will die.
Let me go, bastard!
Olivia, if you hurt her, you motherfucker.
Spare me the threats, Crane. I have all the leverage here. I have Olivia, and I have an old friend of yours.
Spike?
Tough customer. We tried to make him talk, but he hardly said a word. Did a lot of screaming, though. Bring the beast to my palace. If you don't, I'll turn your friends into mindless abomination.
Jesus. How about easing up on that evil mastermind routine?
You have until noon.
What now?
Make the trade. I owe Spike my life 10 times over.
No, you know that asshole can't be trusted, right? He's not letting any of us walk away from this.
We at least have to try.
No, what we have to do is take that motherfucker out. To do that, we need to get into his palace.
We have archives in the town hall. The blueprints for the palace must be in there somewhere.
See what you can find. All right, we're all in this together. So let's get it done.
Sven, Selby, prepare the cars and weapons. Aiden, Kyle, you need to rest, both of you. Tomorrow will be a tough day, and we need you at full strength. We meet at dawn.
Getting that much needed rest, Kyle is woken by Selby, who tells him that Aiden is gone. He's gone to turn himself over to the Baron in an attempt to save Spike. The Baron radios and he's still disappointed despite having Aiden back. He wants Kyle dead too. He tells him to be there by noon or Spike and Olivia die. The sheriff has the blueprints from the palace, and she says that it has a series of escape tunnels as the palace is built on top of the ruins of an old medieval castle. This is the way inside. Swimming to these tunnels and getting through them and taking out the sharpshooters manning the palace walls, Kyle opens the gates and lets everyone in. A firefight takes place and Sven is shot and killed. Lydia then mind controls a bunch of virals, using them to attack the Baron's men. And getting inside the palace, Kyle spots the Baron entering an elevator and takes out the soldiers. Taking the elevator down, Kyle finds it leads to a very large train tunnel, so grabbing a truck, he drives through it, arriving at a facility. There are numerous containment cells here, all of them holding chimeras. The Baron contacts Kyle and tells him he's irritating, but his research is yielding results, allowing him to bend evolution to his will. He unleashes chimera after chimera in an attempt to kill Kyle, and Kyle does his best to kill them, at one point fighting 3 at a time. Thankfully Lydia helps, and she controls them, using them to attack each other and the Baron's men. Kyle then moves deeper into the facility, but this is not just any facility, it's the facility where Kyle was being held all that time. Fighting through more soldiers, he eventually finds Aiden, but there's a surprise in store.
I'm sorry, Kyle.
What?
After Olivia's shocking betrayal, Kyle, Aiden, Spike, Lydia, Camillo, the sheriff, are all sat at a table strapped to their chairs. Lydia explains that they were all gassed and caught by the Baron's men. The Baron enters, followed by Olivia. He says he invited them all there to help him celebrate and that they all helped bring his life's work to completion. He calls Kyle the first human volatile hybrid ever captured. He says that the final tests could only be completed out in the wild. He reveals that he allowed Kyle to escape in order to reignite his survival instincts, and that the key motivation for Kyle was revenge. Injecting the GSB was basically Kyle being the Baron's lab rat. He says that Olivia played her part perfectly, although she was reluctant. A man then wheels something in, a knife. The Baron then uses this knife to kill Spike, and despite attempts by Lydia to mind control the Baron, he kills Camillo too. He wants Kyle to witness the deaths of everyone he cares about. About to kill Lydia, Olivia pipes up and begs the Baron not to do this. He gives Olivia a gun and tells her to put Kyle down. She points the gun at Kyle and turns it on the Baron, but in a very predictable turn of events, the gun is not loaded, and she resorts to stabbing him in the eye instead after Lydia distracts the Baron. He then injects himself with something and runs off. Olivia then frees everyone, telling Kyle that she was always on his side but that she had to hide it until now. Kyle and Aiden then go after the Baron. Confronting him on the roof, a chopper is there. Firing on the chopper forces it to fly away, and Kyle and Aiden fight against the Baron and his men, along with multiple infected. Lydia helps by controlling the infected, but at some point in the fight, this help is no longer available as she's in trouble, so Aiden goes to help her, leaving Kyle to fight the Baron. He stops to say that he's engineered a species to not only dominate the virus, but humanity itself. He injects himself with it, and he mutates into a volatile Chimera hybrid. Fighting the now mutated Baron, Kyle is able to kill him, kicking him off the top of the facility, and finishing him off by driving a pole through his chest. The chopper then turns up again, and it's the GRE. It's his old handler who he had contact with in Haran. She tells Kyle that the Baron was just one of their operatives, but that he'd gone off script, so to speak. So Kyle did them a favour in getting rid of him, it seems. She says that Kyle should focus on the good they can do together. Kyle vows to focus on her and the GRE, indicating that he'll be going after them next alongside Aiden and Lydia. The game then ends. Alright, so that was the plot, but there are a few more things to discuss to wrap up this story, so let's begin by jumping into what happened in terms of Kyle Crane's capture. As we know, after he was infected by the blue liquid given to him by the mother, Kyle became part human, part volatile after the virus invaded every cell in his body. He felt as if something was living inside him, like he was possessed by something. He came across two scientists who had come to find him in order to help him, and using his new beastly abilities, he defended them from a horde of virals. After, it turns out the scientists had planned this, as after this, Kyle was captured by the GRE. In a conversation with Olivia, she reveals that it was her father, Frank Bennett, who was the one that took Kyle to the Baron. She does say, however, that her father took Kyle to the Baron to help him initially, but of course, the Baron had other plans. Kyle would become the Baron's subject alpha. We find out that Frank was actually bitten, and the Baron stopped him from turning, using that as leverage to keep him there and working for him. Frank Bennett thought he was there to help suppress the virus inside Kyle to help heal and restore him, but that was not the case. It was Frank who had managed to restore Kyle's humanity, since he was part volatile, part human, but the Baron wished to replicate Kyle, to engineer the perfect predator, and once Aiden had showed up, he'd found something better than Kyle. Frank then tried to resign after he realised what he was being forced to do to Kyle was effectively torture, but the Baron would not allow this.
He threatened to hurt you unless I helped him, and I couldn't tell you because I didn't want to put you in that kind of danger, so I continued on, torturing that poor man and all those unfortunate creatures. But the only true monster here is the Baron. You must do whatever you can to get away from him. He will use you just like he used me. And the thought of what he might do to you makes me sick.
It does seem that after the events of the game, we may be getting a continuation to the Dying Light universe, as the ending seems to imply going after the GRE as the next step. But let's move on to the big bad Baron. The Baron's real name is Marius Fischer, and there's a bit about his family's background if you look around Castor Woods. The palace that he lives in, and that is connected to the facility where all the experiments were taking place, was formerly a medieval castle. But let's go back to the 1500s. Eleanor Fischer was thought to have been a witch, and as a result in the 1600s, she was killed, and according to a will in the town hall for another of the Baron's ancestors named Heinrich Fischer, she was stabbed through the heart with a knife. It could well be that this knife is the same one that the Baron used to kill Spike and Dr. Camillo, but that's just a theory. The will states that the knife was said to contain Eleanor's presence, as Heinrich had held the blade at one point and had felt it. He also says that their bloodline carries a unique burden, but claimed Eleanor was not a witch, but that she was a visionary. But on to the Baron. Marius Fischer was actually a renowned psychiatrist who worked at the St. Valentine's Mental Asylum. One particular young doctor named Tal Cubero was excited to work with him.
I can't believe this is really happening. Fresh out of medical school and already joining a place like the St. Valentine Asylum. This is an opportunity most could only dream of. To work under Marius Fischer himself. It's unheard of for someone of his stature, with so many projects being undertaken by his medical company, to be so directly involved in an operation of this scale. But everyone knows this is Dr. Fischer's passion project. His fascination with the human mind and with psychiatric care is well known. And to be a part of it is truly the chance of a lifetime. I met Marius Fischer today. He's younger than I thought for someone in his position. And his mind is undeniably sharp. We spoke at length about the work being done here at the asylum. Cutting-edge treatments for psychiatric conditions. The kind of research that could change the field. But then, the conversation turned to the outbreak in Haran. Dr. Fischer seems to view crisis situations of that nature as potential catalysts for great scientific discovery. He spoke as if these tragedies provide unique opportunities for progress, for pushing the boundaries of what we know. I must admit, there's something a little unsettling about his eagerness when it comes to taking advantage of such situations.
Eventually, Dr. Cubero discovered the journals of a man named Peter Paulina, who founded the St. Valentine's Asylum. Paulina had discovered the Fischer family's links to witchcraft and unethical experiments, and we can find these diaries in Cubero's residence. They detail experiments on the earliest patients there at the asylum, methods which shouldn't have existed back then due to the inhumane nature of them. After witnessing the therapy on a catatonic patient named Jonas Rice, Heinrich Fischer carried out electroconvulsive therapy, which he believed would stimulate something deeper than just the brain. Paulina writes how he feels something unnatural occurred at that moment. Heinrich Fischer would go on to tell Paulina that he considered the brain to be a vessel for energies instead of a collection of neurons, and that he started referencing ancient texts. At some point though, Paulina gained access to the restricted ward. There he witnessed patients that had arrived disturbed, but that had transformed into something else, with one woman having developed psychic abilities and another having developed telekinesis. Dr. Fischer claimed that he had unlocked something within these patients. This is very likely the same type of treatment that led to the creation of the Telepaths decades later. This is why Kyle can find the patient treatment records for some of the Telepaths there at the asylum. Paulina had come to realise that these patients were not human. He tried to escape, but the asylum had been locked down. He read about Eleanor Fischer being a witch, and that his friend and colleague Heinrich was conducting rituals in an attempt to pierce the veil between different worlds. It's not known what happened to Peter Paulina, but anyway, around 2015, Dr. Cubero would eventually come to realise that these experimental techniques were still being used there at the asylum, but this still left him conflicted.
It's hard to fathom, but the more I think about it, the more I wonder, could those methods, as horrifying as they are, actually work? Don't extreme times call for extreme measures? The asylum is to be shut down. The outbreak that began in Haran is now spreading across Europe, and it's no longer safe to continue operating. As for the research, Dr. Fischer intends to continue it. He's offered me refuge at his family estate, where we'll have the resources and the privacy to finish the work we started here. I'm torn. On the one hand, our experiments at the asylum crossed the line in ways I never could have imagined. On the other hand, the opportunity to be part of something so groundbreaking is hard to ignore. Time is running out, and I need to decide what side of history I want to be on.
As you heard, the Haran virus had started to spread across Europe and the asylum closed, but I'd guess some patients were just left there. Anyway, the family also owned a large biotech company prior to the outbreak, and the Baron, who had inherited it, wanted to use that to turn the virus into something more dangerous. For one thing, power, as he considered that whoever controlled the virus controls the future, and of course the Baron's area of interest was, as mentioned, creating bioweapons. So Marius, the Baron, attempted to manipulate the GRE.
It never ceases to amaze me how easily certain institutions can be manipulated under the guise of partnership. The GRE has accepted the funding without so much as a second thought, welcoming the supposed assistance in their research. Of course, they believe they're in control, believe this is merely a strategic collaboration. The naivety of those driven by desperation is astounding. They see financial backing as an opportunity, failing to recognize it as a leash. I needn't state what this means. Control over their findings is inevitable. Their research will soon belong to those with the foresight and vision to wield it properly.
Lastly, helping out the survivors at the town hall, this man, Eli, wants Kyle to help track down his father, William, who has dementia and who wandered off 2 days prior. Eli doesn't think too much of his father, and he has a valid reason which we'll soon find out. Searching a cabin nearby, Kyle finds that William, the former park ranger for Casterwoods, was here, but that he'd returned to the Bat Caves for something. Getting there, William is not with it, understandably, but Kyle discovers that this cave was a place where loads of people had been rounded up and had been held for years by the police. The police had helped whoever wanted these people, and Kyle finds a note detailing their guilt when it came to their involvement. And it turns out that William had helped them navigate the harsh terrains of the mountains, even receiving a commendation for his help. William's wife found out what he'd done in helping facilitate the capture and presumably the death of these people, some of whom were left in the cave and had turned into zombies. His wife left him and Eli, and William became a drunk. This is why Eli didn't much like his father. Anyway, Kyle can help William come to terms with what he'd done by blowing up explosives in the cave with William inside them. It's likely that the people rounded up were the people that the Baron wanted for his experimentation. It could also be that they were rejects that had been in prison for years. In terms of what happened after the Haran incident, the world's greatest minds came together to find a vaccine for the Haran virus. What's interesting here is that the Baron's company actually helped the GRE produce the cure for the Haran virus, likely done to get the GRE to trust him. However, the GRE, after promising to shutter their labs, well, they decided to mess things up again, and they modified the Haran virus, and this would lead to a containment breach from one of their labs in Geneva, Switzerland. It's very likely that it was also the Baron's lab that created this new virus, THV-2. Since the Western Alps, where Casterwoods is, are a part of southwestern Switzerland, it could be that the THV containment breach came from the Baron's labs, since Geneva, where the THV outbreak happened, is on the southwestern tip of Switzerland. This resulted in the Fall, a world event that resulted in this new virus wiping out 98% of the global population, and only pockets of civilization remained. With most settlements, like Casterwoods, being very small enclaves, the only large settlement left in the world was Villador in Europe, the last bastion of humanity, apparently. The GRE collapsed shortly afterwards, and as we heard, this led to the Baron offering to provide them funding because he was interested in their research. For those of you who don't know, Aiden is the protagonist of Dying Light 2, Stay Human. As a child, he was raised by a GRE scientist named Vincent Waltz, and Aiden became like a son to him and had a close relationship with Waltz's daughter Mia, whom he considered a sister. Really, the facility that he grew up in was just another load of inhumane experiments, this time infecting young children with a virus, and using inhibitors which were a cocktail of both antizin and a THV derivative. Most children reacted badly to this, but Aiden was different, with his body reacting well to the tests, and this is why he has supernatural abilities. Aiden would become a pilgrim, who were essentially nomads that travel between these small enclaves via the outlands in between, and he was close to Spike, who had escaped Haran with a bunch of survivors shortly after the Haran incident. And Spike dedicated himself to finding out what happened to Crane. Spike and Aiden would split up at one point, since Aiden returned to Villador to find Waltz in an attempt to find Mia, after they got separated 15 years prior after a fire at the GRE hospital they were being kept at, and Spike had helped him get in touch with someone who could help Aiden get into the city. Aiden had partial amnesia and forgot large parts of his past. I won't get fully into the story of Dying Light 2, but if you want to know more about Aiden's story, then check out my video on that one. After Aiden left Villador, he linked back up with Spike and they both continued their search for Kyle Crane. They came across some old GRE files and got a tip on a location where Kyle was potentially being held. Of course, this resulted in them both being caught here at the start of the game's events. As we know from the game, the Chimeras have something called GSB flowing through their bodies. According to Olivia, GSB is a synthetic biocatalyst, a type of chemical synthesis that uses enzymes to catalyze specific chemical reactions. It enhances the DNA of the organism but is not linked at all to their biology. Each variant has the purpose of enhancing a specific trait, be that speed, strength, reflexes, and regeneration. It serves to amplify natural abilities, but in the Chimeras, it targets and enhances their more monstrous qualities instead. Kyle shares a similar biology to the Chimeras in terms of muscular, nervous, and circulatory systems. During another conversation with Olivia, she says that upon studying the Chimeras' DNA, aside from their enhanced abilities, they have a heightened sensitivity to stimuli, which may explain how the red gas works. And as explained earlier, the red gas is the opposite to the blue gas, which acts as a sedative. But now let's focus our attention on the telepaths. So telepathy is something we've seen before. In the following, Kyle experienced this from the mother, which is why he was so freaked out when it happened again the moment Sven made contact with him. But where did the telepaths come from? Well, whereas the Baron's area of interest was producing bioweapons, Dr. Camillo's was telepathy and mind control. At some point, the telepaths escaped the lab and ended up living and hiding out in the marshes in the valley, at a small house. We'll get to why they moved shortly. After meeting the exiles, Kyle can help them out with various activities. At some point, Kyle can find Selby looking concerned. She'd heard chatter on the radio that the Baron was transporting a large batch of chemical compounds, and Kyle heads towards a camping park. Fighting off the infected there, Kyle encounters a hysterical survivor. She introduces herself as Lucy Brown and says that the Baron held her captive for 3 years, as she is yet another who was forced to work for him as a doctor. Kyle notices a tattoo on her arm, which she describes as the Baron marking his workers. But she says that she does not recognize Kyle. Pressing her further on what she did at the Baron's lab, she says that she had to jab the subjects with all kinds of formulas to observe their reactions. She wants Kyle's help to get away, so needs a vehicle and supplies. On his way to source them though, Selby asks Kyle about the tattoo on Lucy's arm. Selby later, once Kyle has got the supplies, tells him she'll go help Lucy herself and not to bother going. Arriving at a small house in the marshes, Kyle finds Selby in there with Lucy at gunpoint. Selby says that Lucy is the one that experimented on the telepaths and that she enjoyed what she did to them. It was the tattoo which triggered Selby's memory. What's more is that she also experimented on Kyle too, contrary to her saying that she did not recognize him earlier on. Kyle needs to make a choice to let Selby get her revenge or to get Selby to back down. I chose to let Selby get her revenge as this quest was called Chain Reaction. I didn't want any of the telepaths to die because of this decision, but I'm not sure of what happens the other way. I didn't really want to play through the majority of the game again just for one decision. Moving on though, another of the favours Kyle can do is meeting a hippie telepath named Starchild. His real name is Benjamin, but we'll call him Starchild anyway. He explains that a telepath's brains have already been rewired, but they aren't yet hitting the peak levels of aggression that accompany the virus's usual symptoms. In his quest, Starchild wished to study Kyle's beastly outbursts, and he hoped that he would be able to find a way to help the other exiles. During their initial conversation, he did something to Kyle, and Kyle frequently heard his own voice accusing him of dooming others and putting various people in danger. This voice is Kyle's own conscience, refusing to let him have peace of mind. Starchild mentions a tree of madness, and on visiting it, Kyle grabs some bark from it along with a gallbladder from a recently turned infected, and takes them both to Starchild, who uses these 2 items to make a stimulant and test it out on Kyle. Kyle's dreams are him confronting certain things that he's been trying to push deep down. After Kyle wakes up, Starchild says that Kyle was able to silence his fear and pain with rage. He took a blood sample whilst Kyle was dreaming, and it contains hormones within it. Starchild's hope is that Kyle's blood will help others find the strength in themselves to do the same. As Jacob mentioned to Kyle, the telepaths had managed to halt the progression of the disease with a strange infusion made from a rare strain of mushroom, an infusion initially created by Dr. Camillo. We can see these odd blue mushrooms in the cave, but what about the Tree of Madness? This tree seems to be drawn by the exiles in various places around Castle Woods. Starchild mentions that he thinks that since the tree is drawing infected to it, this could be the virus actively looking for new hosts. But what of the telepath's current condition? Starchild tells Kyle here that the telepaths are quite literally rotting from the inside, and he mentions the smell. He says that Kyle hasn't said anything about it, but he knows that Kyle can smell it. Starchild says that every inch of him hurts, and he has less and less human thoughts each day. The mushrooms help prolong their death sentence, as he puts it. The gallbladder that Kyle had to obtain for the stimulant was taken from recently turned people in the house that the exiles used to inhabit before they moved to the caves. So what happened at the house? Well, there were two groups of people. Those who accepted what they had been turned into, and those who could not accept it. The people who could not accept it chose to end their suffering humanely, and they chose to die being sealed in the basement of the house. They began to turn, and this is how Kyle finds some of them, infected and turned, so he has to kill them, ending their suffering. Starchild tells Kyle at one point that some didn't want to stay or turn, and instead wanted to take the fight to the Baron. Two people who ran off wanting to fight the Baron were Emma and her son Rick. In another favour for Starchild, he asks Kyle to check out a spot where their telepathic abilities are getting disrupted. Kyle goes to the rail yard and finds the Baron's men there, and they set charges inside as they reported something had been growing inside the tunnels. Entering the tunnels, in which the infected don't seem to attack Kyle, he encounters Rick, who had been trying to influence the infected and control them with his mind. He somehow assimilated into the growths here and asks Kyle to join himself to them. Rick calls this the Unity. Rick shows that he still has some semblance of himself, but this is clearly some sort of hive mind speaking through Rick. He speaks about the Baron and how he studied and evaluated them, and that he desired their power. Rick says that it started with him hearing the thoughts of the infected, and that he told them what to do, and they then told Rick what to do, to merge with them. Rick is the source of the telepathic disruption, so Kyle grants him peace, and then has to run for his life, of course. A scribbled message in the house written by one of the people left there mentions hearing Rick's voice, but only in their dreams. This was after Rick had been assimilated into the hive mind, I guess. One final and very interesting quest involves speaking with the exile's trader Jenna, where she mentions that two of her runners are in trouble, Ron and Anna. Tracking Ron down, he's killed by one of the Baron's men as they want to know where the telepaths are hiding. Finding Anna, it seems that her and Ron were lovers, and Anna is pregnant. Which begs the question, what will the baby be? Human? Human telepath hybrid? Zombie human hybrid? Who knows? But that's it for this explanation on the story of Dying Light, the Beast. I hope you enjoyed this one, and again, thanks to Techland for sponsoring this video. If you enjoyed it, then please leave a like and comment and subscribe if you aren't already, but for now, take care, and I'll see you in the next one.